The cook who was chosen. She wasn't supposed to be there. Clara Whitmore stood in the kitchen of Harlan Ranch, flour dusting her worn sleeves, when the truth hit her like a lightning strike. There had been no job posting, no advertisement in any newspaper. The widowed rancher staring at her from the doorway hadn't hired her at all. His 6-year-old daughter had, and every woman before Clara had been sent away in tears, rejected by a child who refused to speak, refused to eat, refused to let anyone replace the mother she'd lost. Until now. Until Clara arrived, and everything changed. If you're watching from somewhere in this world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far Clara's story travels. And if you believe some families are chosen, not found, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button, and let's begin. The stagecoach left Clara Whitmore in a cloud of dust and doubt. She stood alone on the edge of nowhere, one canvas bag at her feet, watching the coach disappear into the Wyoming horizon. September wind pulled at her plain gray dress and the loose strands of dark hair that had escaped her bun during the long journey from Cheyenne. Around her the land stretched empty and gold, high prairie grass bending in waves, distant mountains purple against the sky, and silence so complete it felt like pressure against her ears. The ranch house sat a quarter-mile up a dirt road, low and weathered, built from pine logs gone silver with age. Smoke rose thin from the chimney. A barn leaned slightly to one side, and a corral fence needed mending. Nothing about it looked welcoming. Nothing about it looked like the new beginning Clara had desperately hoped for. But she had nowhere else to go. She picked up her bag and started walking, her boots crunching on the hard-packed earth. With each step, she reminded herself of the facts. The advertisement had been clear: cook needed. Isolated ranch. Room and board plus modest wages. Must be willing to work hard and ask few questions. She'd answered immediately, her letter brief and honest. She could cook. She could work. She had no family to return to and no prospects in Cheyenne. The reply had come within a week. Simple, direct. Position yours if you want it. Arrive September 15th. E. Hale, Harlan Ranch. That was 3 days ago. She'd sold what little she owned, paid for the stagecoach, and left the boarding house where she'd been scrubbing floors to pay rent. This job was survival. Nothing more, nothing less. As she approached the house, the front door opened. A man stepped onto the porch, and Clara's steps faltered. He was tall and lean, maybe 35, with dark hair that needed cutting and a beard that needed trimming. He wore work clothes, canvas pants, a faded shirt with rolled sleeves, boots scarred from labor. But it was his face that stopped her. Hard lines, weather-worn, and eyes the color of winter sky, cold and distant. Ethan Hale. It had to be. Miss Whitmore. His voice was low, flat, neither welcoming nor hostile. A statement, not a greeting. Mr. Hale. Clara climbed the porch steps, setting her bag down carefully. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm ready to start whenever you need me. He studied her for a long moment, those cold eyes taking in her plain dress, her worn boots, the careful way she held herself, upright despite exhaustion, dignified despite desperation. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it, because he nodded once. Kitchen's through there. Stove works but needs patience. Well's out back. Meat's in the cold cellar. He gestured vaguely toward the interior of the house. Your room's upstairs, first door on the left. I expect breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, supper at dusk. I'm not particular about what you cook, long as it's edible. I understand. One more thing. He paused, his jaw tightening. My daughter, she doesn't talk much. Don't take it personal. Before Clara could respond, he stepped off the porch and headed toward the barn, his shoulders rigid, his stride purposeful. Conversation over. Clara watched him go, then turned toward the house. The interior was dim and spare. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, a black cook stove against one wall, a rough pine table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair near the fireplace. Everything was clean but joyless, functional but empty of warmth. No curtains on the windows, no rug on the floor, no photographs, no books, no signs that people actually lived here, rather than simply existed. The silence felt thick, almost suffocating. Clara set her bag down and removed her traveling cloak, hanging it on a peg by the door. She was rolling up her sleeves when she felt it, the weight of being watched. She turned slowly. A small figure stood in the shadowed doorway that led to what must be the bedrooms. A girl, no more than 6 years old, with dark hair and two careful braids, and eyes exactly like her father's, that same winter blue, that same careful distance. "Hello," Clara said softly. "You must be Lily." The child didn't respond, didn't smile, didn't move. She just stood there watching with an intensity that seemed far too old for such a young face. Clara crouched down, bringing herself to the girl's eye level. "My name is Clara. I'm going to be cooking here for a while. Is there anything special you like to eat?" Silence. "Do you like biscuits? I make pretty good biscuits. Or maybe pie? I can make apple pie. If your father has apples." Still nothing. The girl's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Not quite interest, but awareness. She was listening, evaluating. Clara smiled gently. "That's all right. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. But if you ever do want to tell me something, I'll be right here." She stood and turned back toward the stove, giving the child space. Behind her, she heard nothing, no footsteps, no movement. But when she glanced back a moment later, the doorway was empty. The rest of the afternoon passed in practical work. Clara explored the kitchen, taking inventory. The pantry was adequately stocked: flour, cornmeal, salt, dried beans, a few tins of preserves. The cold cellar held potatoes, onions, and salted meat. Someone had been keeping the household running, but barely. Everything had the feeling of duty without care, function without heart. She found apples in a crate, slightly wrinkled but still good. Perfect. By the time dusk began to settle, Clara had supper ready: fried salt pork, boiled potatoes, and biscuits that came out of the oven golden and steaming. She set the table for 3, placing plates and forks with quiet precision, then lit a lamp against the gathering darkness. Ethan came in as the last light faded from the windows. He washed at the basin near the door, his movements economical, then sat at the table without comment. A moment later, Lily appeared, taking the chair across from her father. She sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes on her empty plate. Clara served them both, then took her own seat. They ate in silence. Complete, absolute silence. No conversation, no acknowledgement. Ethan chewed methodically, his gaze fixed somewhere in the middle distance. Lily ate small bites, her attention on her father, then on Clara, then back to her father, as if watching for something Clara couldn't identify. It was the loneliest meal Clara had ever experienced. When Ethan finished, he stood, nodded once, "Thanks," she supposed, and left. Lily remained at the table, watching Clara with those two observant eyes. "Did you like the biscuits?" Clara asked quietly. A small nod, the first real response. "I'm glad." Clara began clearing the plates, her movements gentle. "Tomorrow I'll make something different. Maybe stew. Does your father like stew?" Another small nod. "Good." Clara paused at the wash basin, looking back at the girl. "Thank you for telling me." The faintest hint of something crossed Lily's face. Not quite a smile, but close. Then she slipped from her chair and disappeared into the shadows of the hallway. Clara washed the dishes in the quiet, then climbed the stairs to her room. It was small and plain: a narrow bed, a washstand, a single window overlooking the darkened prairie. Her bag sat on the floor where someone, Ethan, she assumed, had placed it. She unpacked her few belongings: 2 spare dresses, undergarments, a nightgown, a hairbrush, and a small wooden box containing the only thing she had left from her previous life. She didn't open the box. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared out the window at the vast darkness beyond. Somewhere out there, the wind moved through grass she couldn't see. Somewhere out there, the world continued without her. This was her life now. This silent house, this distant man, this watchful child. Clara closed her eyes and reminded herself she had survived worse. She had survived the fever that took her parents. She had survived the cousin who turned her out when the money ran dry. She had survived months of hunger and uncertainty in Cheyenne, working jobs that barely kept her fed. She would survive this too, even if it felt like living in a tomb. The next morning, Clara woke before dawn and went downstairs to start breakfast. The kitchen was cold, the stove dark. She built up the fire, filled the coffee pot, and began making flapjacks, working by lamplight until the sun began to rise. Ethan appeared exactly at dawn, as if summoned by some internal clock. He poured himself coffee and sat at the table, waiting. Lily came a moment later, taking her usual seat, her hair already neatly braided. Clara served them both, then joined them at the table. Again, they ate in silence. This became the pattern. Breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, supper at dusk. Every meal the same, quiet, efficient, empty of connection. Ethan spoke only when necessary, his instructions brief and practical. Lily watched and listened, but never spoke. Clara filled her days with work. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, scrubbing floors, washing windows, beating rugs. She mended curtains she found stored in a trunk and hung them in the windows. She organized the pantry and made lists of supplies they'd need before winter. She cooked meals with increasing care, trying different recipes, hoping to bring some small warmth to the table. Nothing changed. By the end of the first week, Clara understood what she'd walked into. This wasn't a home. It was a place where broken people went through the motions of living. Ethan existed in some frozen state of grief, moving through his days with mechanical precision. And Lily was watching everything, waiting for something Clara couldn't name. On the 8th morning, something shifted. Clara was rolling out pie dough when she felt that familiar weight of being watched. She glanced over her shoulder and found Lily standing in the doorway, as usual. But this time, instead of disappearing when Clara noticed her, the girl stepped forward. One step, then another. She stopped beside the table, her small hands clasped in front of her, and watched Clara work. "Want to help?" Clara asked softly. A hesitation, then the smallest nod. Clara's heart lifted. She pulled out a chair. "Come here. You can help me cut the apples." Lily climbed onto the chair. Clara handed her a butter knife, dull enough to be safe, and showed her how to slice the peeled apples into pieces. They worked side by side, Clara stealing glances at the girl's serious expression, the careful way she concentrated on each cut. "You're good at this," Clara said. Lily's lips curved, almost imperceptibly. They finished the pie tortilla together, and when Clara slid it into the oven, she turned to find Lily still there, still watching. "Would you like to learn to make biscuits tomorrow?" Clara asked. A nod. Definite this time. "All right, tomorrow then." That afternoon, when Clara served dinner, she noticed Ethan's gaze linger on his daughter for a moment longer than usual. Lily sat straighter, a hint of pride in her posture. She'd helped make the pie, and she wanted him to know. He said nothing, but something in his expression softened just for a moment. After that, Lily began spending more time in the kitchen. She didn't speak, but she helped. Fetching ingredients, stirring pots, setting the table. Clara talked to her gently as they worked, not requiring responses, just filling the silence with warmth. "My mother taught me to make this bread," Clara said one morning, kneading dough while Lily watched. She said the secret was patience. You can't rush it. You have to let it rise in its own time. Lily's eyes followed Clara's hands, absorbing every word. "She used to tell me stories while we cooked, made-up stories about brave girls who went on adventures." Clara smiled at the memory. "Would you like me to tell you a story?" A nod, eager this time. So Clara told her a story about a girl who lived on a ranch and found an injured bird and nursed it back to health, and when it flew away, it brought back a feather made of gold. Lily listened with complete attention, her eyes wide. When the story ended, Lily reached out and touched Clara's hand. Just for a moment. A brief warm connection. Then she slipped away, as always. But Clara felt something shift inside her chest. This child was reaching out, testing trust, offering small pieces of herself. And Clara realized with sudden clarity that she was doing the same. This job, this place, it wasn't just survival anymore. It was becoming something else. 2 weeks into her time at Harlan Ranch, Clara discovered the truth by accident. She was upstairs, changing the linens on Lily's bed when she noticed a loose floorboard near the window. Curious, she lifted it carefully and found a small space beneath, a child's hiding place. Inside was a collection of treasures, a pressed flower, a bird's feather, 3 smooth stones, and a folded piece of newspaper. Clara almost replaced the board without looking further, but something made her pause. She unfolded the newspaper carefully. It was old, dated from 2 months earlier, a page from the Cheyenne newspaper, classified advertisements section. Her eyes scanned the columns: farm equipment, livestock, land sales. Her breath caught. There was no advertisement for a cook. She read every line twice, 3 times. Nothing. No posting for Harlan Ranch, no request for household help. Clara's hands began to shake. She replaced everything carefully, lowering the floorboard back into place, her mind racing. If there had been no advertisement, then how had she... She thought back to her arrival in Cheyenne, desperate and nearly destitute. She'd been staying at a boarding house, taking any work she could find. One morning, she'd found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside, a handwritten note about the position at Harlan Ranch, instructions for applying, and enough money for stagecoach fare. She'd assumed the boarding house owner had passed it along. She'd never questioned it. But now... Clara sat down on the edge of Lily's small bed, the truth settling over her like cold water. There had been no job posting. Someone had sought her out specifically. Someone had chosen her. She looked around the room, neat and spare like the rest of the house. A child's dress hanging on a peg, a rag doll sitting on the pillow, and on the small table beside the bed, a pencil and paper, as if Lily had been writing something. Clara's eyes fell on a piece of paper covered in careful, childish handwriting. She is kind. She doesn't get angry. She tells stories. She stays. Beneath that, crossed out multiple times. Not her. Not her. Not her. And at the bottom, Clara. Understanding crashed over Clara like a wave. Lily had been testing them. Every woman who'd come before. Every potential replacement for the mother she'd lost. The child had been choosing, rejecting anyone who didn't measure up to some standard only she understood. Until Clara. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, emotions warring inside her. She should be angry. She'd been manipulated, brought here under false pretenses. But instead, she felt something else entirely. This broken child, living in this broken house with her grief-frozen father, had been searching for someone. Not just anyone. Someone specific. Someone who would stay. Someone who would be kind without being paid to be kind. Someone who would care without being asked to care. Someone who would choose to be here, even when it was hard. Clara had been that person without even knowing it. She stood slowly and went back downstairs. Lily was in the kitchen, as she often was now, sitting at the table and drawing on a piece of paper. She looked up when Clara entered, her expression watchful, as always. Clara sat down across from her. "Lily," she said softly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." The girl's eyes widened slightly. Was there really a job advertisement for a cook? Silence stretched between them. Then, very slowly, Lily shook her head. "Did you find me somehow? Did you ask your father to hire me?" Another head shake. Then Lily picked up her pencil and wrote on the paper, "Papa doesn't know." Clara absorbed this. "So you arranged for me to come here, without your father knowing?" A small nod. "How?" Lily wrote again, her letters careful. "Mrs. Chen, Mercantile. She helps me." Mrs. Chen, the woman who ran the mercantile in the nearest town, 15 miles away. Clara had heard Ethan mention her once. Apparently Lily had somehow convinced this woman to help her find a cook, to reach out to Clara specifically, to arrange everything without Ethan's knowledge. "Why me?" Clara whispered. Lily put down the pencil and looked at Clara with those ancient eyes. Then she reached across the table and touched Clara's hand again, the same brief, warm contact. "Because you're kind," her expression said. "Because you stay. Because you're the one I've been looking for." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "Does your father know any of this?" Another head shake. "What happened to the women before me?" Lily picked up her pencil. "I made them leave." "How?" "I didn't eat. I didn't talk. I cried every night. Papa sent them away." "But not me." Lily shook her head. Then she wrote 3 more words. "You are different." Clara sat back, her mind reeling. This child had orchestrated everything. She'd rejected woman after woman until she found someone who met her impossible standards. She'd manipulated circumstances, convinced a town merchant to help, brought Clara here without anyone's full knowledge, and Clara had walked into it completely unaware. Lily, Clara said carefully, your father needs to know the truth. Fear flashed across the girl's face. She grabbed Clara's hand, holding tight, shaking her head frantically. I won't leave, Clara said quickly. I promise I won't leave. But your father deserves to know what's happening in his own house. Lily's grip tightened. Do you trust me? Clara asked. A long pause, then slowly a nod. Then trust me with this. I'll tell him the right way. I'll make sure he understands. Lily released her hand reluctantly, but her eyes held doubt. She'd been burned before, Clara realized. She'd trusted adults who'd left. She'd lost her mother and been left with a father who'd retreated so far into grief he couldn't see his own daughter drowning. Of course, she didn't believe anyone would stay. I mean it, Clara said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. Whether your father hired me or not, I'm choosing to be here. Do you understand? I'm choosing this. Something in Lily's expression shifted. Hope, fragile and desperate. Clara stood. I'll talk to him tonight, after supper. The rest of the day felt interminable. Clara moved through her tasks with mechanical precision, her mind racing with what she would say, how she would explain. Lily stayed close, anxious, watching Clara's every move as if afraid she might disappear. Supper was the usual silent affair. Ethan ate without comment, Lily picked at her food, and Clara barely tasted anything. When Ethan stood to leave, Clara spoke. Mr. Hale, I need to speak with you. It's important. He paused, surprise flickering across his face. She'd never asked to speak with him before. It's about Lily, Clara continued, and about why I'm really here. His expression hardened immediately. You're here because I hired you. No, Clara said quietly. I'm not. Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked at his daughter, who'd gone very still, her eyes wide and frightened. Then he looked back at Clara. What are you talking about? Sit down, Clara said. Please. Both of you need to hear this. And as the lamp flickered and shadows gathered in the corners of the room, Clara began to tell them the truth. All of it. The newspaper that was never published. The arrangement she never questioned. The child who'd been choosing all along. And in that moment, in that small, isolated ranch house on the Wyoming prairie, 3 broken people stood at the edge of something that could either shatter completely or begin, impossibly, to heal. The silence that followed Clara's confession felt like something alive, breathing, waiting, dangerous. Ethan stood frozen at the table, his knuckles white where his hands gripped the back of his chair. His eyes moved from Clara to Lily, then back again, his jaw working as if trying to form words that wouldn't come. The lamplight cast harsh shadows across his face, making him look older, harder. You're telling me, he said finally, his voice low and controlled, that there was no advertisement, that my 6-year-old daughter somehow arranged to bring a stranger to this ranch without my knowledge. Yes, Clara said steadily, that's impossible. It's the truth. His gaze cut to Lily, who'd shrunk in her chair, her small hands twisted together in her lap. Lily, look at me. The girl raised her eyes slowly, and Clara saw terror there, pure, desperate terror. This child who'd been so careful, so patient, so determined, was now facing the one thing she'd feared most, her father's anger. Did you do this? Ethan asked. Lily nodded, barely perceptible. How? The word came out rough, almost broken. How could you possibly— She had help, Clara interjected quickly, from Mrs. Chen at the Mercantile. The woman must have taken pity on her, must have understood what Lily was trying to do. Ethan's face darkened. Esther Chen knew about this? I assume so. Lily couldn't have managed it alone. He turned away sharply, pacing to the window, his shoulders rigid with tension. This is— He stopped, pressing his hand against the window frame. I don't even know what this is. It's a child trying to survive, Clara said quietly. Survive? He spun back toward her. She lives in a warm house. She has food, clothes, everything she needs. Everything except what she needs most. Clara stood, keeping her voice calm despite the way her heart hammered. Mr. Hale, when's the last time you really looked at your daughter? I look at her every day. No. You look through her. You sit at the same table and eat the same meals and exist in the same space, but you don't see her. You haven't seen her since your wife died. The words hit like a slap. Ethan's face went white, then flushed. You have no right. I have every right. Claire's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath it now. I've been here 2 weeks, and in that time I've watched this child desperate for any scrap of attention from you. She helps me cook, hoping you'll notice. She braids her own hair every morning, hoping you'll see. She sets the table exactly the way you like it, hoping for one kind word, and you give her nothing. That's not true, but his voice wavered. When's the last time you spoke to her about anything other than necessities? When's the last time you asked her how she's feeling? When's the last time you told her you loved her? Ethan stared at Clara, something crumbling in his expression. She lost her mother, Clara continued, relentless now because someone had to say it. Someone had to break through the wall he'd built. But you lost your wife, and instead of grieving together, instead of holding on to each other, you both just stopped. You stopped living, and she's been drowning right in front of you. I do the best I can. His voice cracked. I know you do, but it's not enough. And Lily knew it wasn't enough, so she did the only thing she could think of. She tried to find someone who could help both of you heal. Ethan sank into his chair, suddenly looking exhausted. He scrubbed his hands over his face, and when he looked up, his eyes were haunted. I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to be what she needs. Then learn, Clara said simply. Start now. Right now. Talk to your daughter. He looked at Lily as if seeing her for the first time in a year. Really seeing her. The fear in her eyes, the tension in her small shoulders, the way she was holding herself so carefully, as if bracing for rejection. Lily, he said hoarsely. Come here. She didn't move. The fear had frozen her. Please, he added, and something in his voice must have reached her because she slipped from her chair and took 3 hesitant steps toward him. Ethan reached out and pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in a fierce embrace. Lily went rigid with shock, then melted against him, her small hands clutching his shirt. Her shoulders began to shake. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry, little bird. I'm so sorry. And then Lily did something Clara hadn't heard in 2 weeks of living in that house. She spoke. Don't send Clara away. Her voice was small and raw, muffled against her father's chest. Please don't send her away. I look so hard. The others were mean or scared or they didn't like me, but Clara is kind. She tells me stories. She lets me help. She makes everything feel less empty. Please, Papa, please. The words tumbled out in a desperate rush, breaking apart on sobs. Clara's throat tightened, her own eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. Ethan held his daughter tighter, his own face twisted with grief and guilt. I won't send her away. I promise. You always send them away. Not this time. Promise? I promise. He pulled back slightly, looking into her tear-stained face. But Lily, you can't do things like this. You can't make arrangements without telling me. You can't manipulate people. I just wanted someone who would stay, Lily whispered. Someone who wouldn't leave like Mama did. The naked pain in those words hung in the air. Ethan closed his eyes, pulling her close again. Your mama didn't want to leave. You know that, don't you? A nod against his chest. And I didn't mean to leave you too. But I did, didn't I? I left you all alone in this grief, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Clara turned away, giving them privacy, busying herself at the wash basin. Behind her, she heard quiet murmurs, the sound of Lily's crying gradually subsiding, the creak of the rocking chair as Ethan settled with his daughter in his lap. She washed the supper dishes slowly, carefully, letting them have this moment. Outside the window, night had fallen completely, stars brilliant in the vast darkness. The wind whispered through the grass, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. When she finally turned back, Lily had fallen asleep in Ethan's arms, exhausted from emotion. He sat very still, one hand stroking her hair, his expression distant but not shut down, processing, thinking, perhaps beginning to feel again after a year of numbness. I'll take her upstairs, Clara offered quietly. No. Ethan's voice was soft. I'll do it. He stood carefully, cradling Lily against his chest, and carried her toward the stairs. Clara watched them go, then sat at the table, suddenly exhausted herself. She'd expected anger, confrontation, perhaps even to be sent away immediately despite Ethan's promise to Lily. But this raw honesty, this painful beginning of healing, was something different entirely. She wasn't sure what it meant for her. Footsteps on the stairs drew her attention. Ethan returned, moving to the stove where the coffee pot still sat. He poured 2 cups, brought them to the table, and sat across from Clara. They drank in silence for a long moment. I should be angry, Ethan said finally. At Lily, at Esther Chen, at you for not telling me sooner. I only discovered it today. I believe you. He turned the cup in his hands. But even if I wanted to be angry, I can't. Because everything you said was true. I have been looking through her, through everything, just trying to get through each day without falling apart. Grief does that, Clara said gently. My wife, Catherine, she was the heart of this place, of our family. When she died, he stopped, his jaw working. I didn't know how to keep going, but I had Lily and the ranch and responsibilities, so I just shut everything down, kept moving forward without feeling anything. And Lily saw it, felt it. She must have thought she'd lost both parents. His voice was thick with regret. And instead of helping her, I made it worse by bringing in women who couldn't replace her mother. Women I didn't even want here, honestly. I just thought Lily needed a woman's care, that I wasn't enough. But I never asked her what she needed, never gave her a choice. So she took choice for herself, Clara said. She found her own solution. Ethan looked at her directly for the first time since sitting down. Why you? Clara considered the question. I don't know. Maybe because I needed this as much as she did. I had nowhere to go, no one to care if I lived or died. Maybe she sensed that. Maybe she knew I wouldn't leave because I had no reason to leave. That's a hard way to live. It was survival, same as you. Something shifted in his expression, recognition, perhaps. Kinship. What happened to bring you to that point? Clara wrapped her hands around her cup, the warmth grounding her. My parents died of fever 3 years ago. I was 21. My mother's cousin took me in, but only until she realized there was no inheritance. Then I was a burden. She kept me as unpaid help for a year, then turned me out when her daughter got married and needed my room. I went to Cheyenne, found work where I could, cleaning houses, washing laundry, scrubbing floors in boarding houses, barely surviving. And then Lily's letter arrived. Clara met his eyes. I thought it was Providence. Turns out it was a 6-year-old girl who refused to give up hope. She always was stubborn. A ghost of a smile crossed Ethan's face. Gets that from her mother. Tell me about her, Clara said impulsively. About Catherine. Ethan's smile faded, but not into the closed-off blankness she'd seen before. This was different, sad but open, willing to remember despite the pain. She was fierce, kind but fierce, laughed loud, cried hard, felt everything deeply. She grew up in Philadelphia, came west with her brother when he bought land nearby. Everyone thought she was crazy to marry a ranch hand and live out here in the middle of nowhere. But she didn't care. She said the land made her feel alive, said the sky was bigger here, the air cleaner, the possibilities endless. He stared into his coffee. We had 5 good years, built this place together, started the herd, had Lily, and then she got sick. Pneumonia. It happened so fast. 1 week she was fine, and the next... He didn't finish, didn't need to. I'm sorry, Clara said quietly. Me too. He looked up, and his eyes were clearer now, present. She would have liked you. Catherine, I mean. She didn't have patience for pretense, would have appreciated your directness. I'm not sure calling you out counts as appreciation. It's what I needed to hear, what Lily needed someone to say. He paused. You really didn't know? About Lily's arrangement? Not until today. I found the newspaper page hidden in her room. There was no advertisement, so I started putting pieces together. And you stayed anyway, even knowing you'd been manipulated into coming here. I told Lily I'd stay, Clara said simply. I don't break promises. Ethan studied her for a long moment. Neither do I. So you should know, what I told Lily is true. I won't send you away. You have a place here as long as you want it. Even though there was never really a job, there is now. His tone was firm. Legitimate wages, clear terms. You're not here under false pretenses anymore. You're here because I'm asking you to stay, because Lily needs you, and frankly, so do I. The honesty in his words startled Clara. I don't know anything about being a mother figure. I'm not asking you to replace Catherine. I'm asking you to be yourself. Whatever you've been doing these past 2 weeks, it's working. Lily's eating better, sleeping better. The house feels different, warmer. You did that just by being present, by caring. I care because she matters, Claire said, not because I'm being paid to care. I know, that's why Lily chose you. He drained his coffee and stood. I need to talk to Esther Chen tomorrow, figure out what happened exactly. But tonight, I just want to thank you for telling me the truth, for not running when you discovered it, for seeing what I was too blind to see. Claire nodded, unsure what to say. The dynamic between them had shifted fundamentally in the span of one conversation. The distant, cold employer was gone, replaced by a man who was broken but beginning to mend. A man who was, perhaps for the first time, truly present. Get some rest, Ethan said. Tomorrow we start fresh, all of us. He left her alone in the kitchen. Clara sat for a while longer, processing everything that had happened. The truth revealed, the promises made, the fragile beginnings of something that might eventually become a family. She finally climbed the stairs to her room, but paused outside Lily's door. It stood slightly ajar. She pushed it open quietly and looked inside. Lily lay curled under her quilt, her face peaceful in sleep. On the chair beside her bed sat Ethan, exactly where he must have been since carrying her upstairs. He'd pulled the chair close, one hand resting near Lily's, keeping watch. He looked up as Clara appeared in the doorway. Their eyes met across the dimly lit room. No words were exchanged, but something passed between them. Understanding, alliance, the beginning of trust. Clara retreated to her own room, and for the first time since arriving at Harlan Ranch, she fell asleep without the tight knot of anxiety in her chest. The future was still uncertain, the wounds still fresh, but they were facing them now, together. The next morning brought changes. Ethan came down to breakfast and actually spoke, not just functional instructions, but real conversation. He asked Lily what she wanted to do that day. He asked Clara if she needed anything from town. His words were halting, awkward from disuse, but genuine. Lily responded cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. She told her father about the pie she'd helped make, about the stories Clara told while they cooked, about the bird's nest she'd found near the barn. Can I see it? Ethan asked. The nest? Lily's face lit up. After breakfast, she took his hand and led him outside, chattering in her small, rusty voice about the nest and the eggs and how she'd been watching the mother bird. Clara watched them go from the kitchen window, something warm and painful expanding in her chest. This was what Lily had been fighting for, this simple thing that should have been natural but had been lost in grief. A father who listened, a father who cared. She turned back to her work, but found herself smiling. Later that morning, Ethan rode into town. He returned in the early afternoon with supplies and a grim expression. He found Clara in the kitchen, where she was teaching Lily to knead bread dough. Esther confirmed everything, he said without preamble. Lily came to her 3 months ago, begging for help, said the women I'd hired were wrong, that they made her feel worse. Esther took pity on her, helped her write letters to employment offices in Cheyenne. When they found your name, a woman alone, desperate for work, Lily insisted you were the one. How did she know? Clara asked. Esther said Lily looked at dozens of applications. Rejected most immediately. But when she saw your letter, you said you had no family, that you needed steady work, that you were willing to go anywhere. She told Esther, this one. She understands being alone. She won't leave. Clara's throat tightened. A 6-year-old child reading between the lines of a desperate woman's application, seeing kinship and shared loneliness. I'm not angry, Ethan continued. At Esther, I mean. She thought she was helping, and she was right. Lily needed someone. We both did. He paused. But I told her this stops now. No more secrets. If Lily needs something, she tells me, and I listen. Will you? Clara asked quietly. Really listen. I'm going to try. He looked at his daughter, who was focused intently on the dough, her small hands pushing and folding. I'm going to try to be the father she deserves. That's all anyone can ask. Over the following days, the transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Ethan began joining them in the kitchen some evenings, sitting at the table while Clara and Lily cooked, asking questions about their day. He started talking to Lily during meals, about the ranch, about the horses, about plans for winter. Lily responded in her quiet way, her voice growing steadier each day. Clara watched them carefully knit themselves back together and tried to figure out where she fit in this emerging dynamic. She was no longer just a cook hired under false pretenses, but she wasn't family either. She existed in some undefined space between, and she wasn't sure how long that could last. One evening, about a week after the truth had come out, Lily approached Clara as she was preparing supper. Clara? Her voice was still soft, tentative. Yes, sweetness? Are you happy here? The question caught Clara off guard. Why do you ask? Because... Lily twisted her hands together. Because if you're not happy, you might leave. And Papa said you're staying, but I want you to stay because you want to, not because you promised. Clara crouched down to Lily's level. I am happy here. Happier than I've been in a long time. Do you know why? Lily shook her head. Because I matter here. You and your father need me, and it feels good to be needed. But more than that, you've given me something I thought I'd lost. A purpose. A reason to wake up each morning beyond just survival. She touched Lily's cheek gently. You saved me just as much as I saved you. Really? Really? Clara smiled. So yes, I want to stay, very much. Relief flooded Lily's face. She threw her arms around Clara's neck, hugging her tightly. Clara held her close, breathing in the scent of sunshine and soap in the girl's dark hair, and felt something settle deep in her soul. This was real. This fragile, broken, slowly healing thing between the three of them. It was real. And it mattered. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Clara and Ethan sat at the table drinking coffee, as had become their new habit. The silence between them was comfortable now, no longer weighted with distance and grief. She talks more every day, Ethan said quietly. I'd forgotten what her voice sounded like. Really sounded like, without the fear. She's finding herself again, Clara said. Finding safety. Because of you. Because of both of us. She needed you to come back to her, Ethan. That's what made the difference. He turned his cup in his hands. I meant what I said before, about needing you here. Not just for Lily, for me too. You remind me that life continues, that it's possible to feel things again without breaking. Clara met his eyes. There was something in his gaze she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too. Something that made her pulse quicken. I'm glad I can help, she said carefully. It's more than help. He paused, seeming to choose his words. When Catherine died, I thought that was it. That I'd had my chance at happiness and lost it. That all I could do was survive and make sure Lily survived. But these past weeks, with you here, it's like remembering there's more to life than just getting through it. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know. You've brought light back to this house, Clara. You've brought us back to life. The words hung between them, honest and raw. Clara didn't know how to respond. She felt something, too. Something growing in the warmth of shared meals and quiet conversations, and the way Ethan had started looking at her lately, as if really seeing her. But she was afraid of it. Afraid of wanting something more than she'd bargained for. Afraid of losing it if she reached for it. Thank you, she said finally, for telling me. They finished their coffee in silence, but it was charged now, full of unspoken possibilities. When they said goodnight and retreated to their separate rooms, Clara lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and wondering what would happen when winter came, and they were even more isolated, even more dependent on each other. She wondered if she was brave enough to find out. The answer came sooner than Clara expected, delivered not by Winter, but by an unexpected visitor on a crisp October morning. Clara was in the garden behind the house, pulling the last of the carrots before the first hard freeze, when she heard the sound of a wagon approaching. Lily was beside her, placing vegetables carefully in a basket, and at the sound both of them straightened. "Someone's coming," Lily said, her voice carrying a note of worry. Visitors were rare at Harlan Ranch, and the child had learned to be wary of strangers. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and moved toward the front of the house. Ethan emerged from the barn at the same moment, his expression alert and cautious. They reached the yard together just as a fine wagon pulled to a stop, driven by a man in town clothes. Beside him sat a woman in a deep burgundy traveling dress, her blonde hair arranged in elaborate curls beneath a fashionable hat. The woman was beautiful in a calculated way, carefully composed, expensively dressed, with sharp blue eyes that assessed the ranch with obvious disapproval. "Ethan," she said as the man helped her down from the wagon. Her voice was smooth, cultured, with an edge like silk stretched over steel. "It's been too long." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Margaret." Clara felt Lily press against her side, one small hand gripping her skirt. The child was tense, radiating distrust. "You remember me, surely," the woman continued, moving toward Ethan with practiced grace. "Margaret Thornton, Catherine's cousin from Denver. I came for the funeral last year, though I'm not surprised you've forgotten. You weren't exactly present for much of anything." The barb was delivered with a smile, but it landed like a slap. Ethan's expression hardened. "I remember," he said flatly. "What are you doing here, Margaret?" "Visiting, of course. When I heard from Esther Chen that you'd finally hired proper help, I thought it was time to check on my poor cousin's family." Her gaze swept to Clara, assessing and dismissing in one glance. "You must be the new cook." "Clara Whitmore," Clara said, keeping her voice neutral despite the instant dislike coiling in her stomach. "How quaint." Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. She turned her attention to Lily, who shrank further behind Clara. "And there's sweet Lily. My goodness, child, you've grown so thin. Is she being fed properly?" "She's perfectly healthy," Ethan said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Of course. I'm sure you're all doing your best." Margaret's tone suggested she believed the opposite. "But that's precisely why I've come. I've been thinking a great deal about Lily's future, and I have a proposition for you, Ethan. Might we speak inside? This wind is absolutely dreadful." Without waiting for an invitation, she swept toward the house. The driver tipped his hat and remained with the wagon. Ethan looked at Clara, frustration and something like warning in his eyes, then followed Margaret inside. Clara and Lily remained in the yard for a moment. "I don't like her," Lily whispered. "I noticed," Clara said quietly. She crouched down to meet Lily's eyes. "But she's your mother's family. We should at least hear what she has to say." "She's going to try to take me away." Lily's voice was certain, laced with old fear. "She tried before, right after Mama died. She told Papa I should live with her in Denver." Clara's stomach dropped. "What did your father say?" "He said no. He said I belonged here, with him, but she said he didn't know how to raise a girl alone. She said terrible things." Lily's eyes welled with tears. "She made Papa feel bad, made him think he wasn't good enough." Understanding clicked into place. This was why Ethan had started hiring women to help with Lily. Not just because he thought his daughter needed feminine care, but because Margaret Thornton had planted the seed that he was inadequate, that he was failing his daughter by keeping her on this isolated ranch. "Come on," Clara said, taking Lily's hand. "Let's go inside. Your father needs you." They found Margaret seated at the table, her gloves removed, examining the room with barely concealed disdain. Ethan stood near the stove, his arms crossed, his posture defensive. "As I was saying," Margaret continued as Clara and Lily entered, "the situation here is clearly untenable. A young girl growing up in the wilderness with only a grief-stricken father and hired help for company. It's not appropriate, Ethan. You must see that." "Lily is fine," Ethan said through gritted teeth. "Is she?" "She looks half-starved. She's clearly shy and withdrawn, and she's receiving no proper education." Margaret's gaze flicked to Lily with false sympathy. "Catherine would be heartbroken to see her daughter growing up like this. Don't you dare use Catherine's name to— I'm only speaking the truth. Margaret's voice remained calm, reasonable, which somehow made it worse. I loved my cousin dearly, and I know what she wanted for her daughter. She wanted Lily to have opportunities, education, society, not this primitive existence. Clara felt Lily trembling beside her. She placed a steadying hand on the girl's shoulder. What exactly are you proposing? Ethan asked coldly. I'm offering to take Lily to Denver, to raise her properly, as Catherine would have wanted. She'd attend a good school, learn music and art, associate with refined children. I can give her everything you can't provide here. Margaret leaned forward. I know you love her, Ethan. If you truly want what's best for your daughter, you'll let her go. The silence that followed was suffocating. Clara watched Ethan's face, saw him struggling with the same doubts and guilt that had plagued him since Catherine's death. Margaret knew exactly where to strike, at his deepest insecurity as a father. Papa? Lily's voice was small but steady. She stepped forward, away from Clara. Papa, I don't want to go. Margaret's expression flickered with irritation before smoothing back into false kindness. Darling, you don't understand what I'm offering. You'd have beautiful dresses, toys, friends your own age. I don't care about those things. Lily moved to stand beside her father. I want to stay here with Papa and Clara. Clara? Margaret's gaze sharpened on Clara. The cook? Child, she's hired help. She's not family. Yes, she is, Lily said, her voice stronger now. She's more family than you've ever been. Lily, Ethan started, but his daughter wasn't finished. You came to Mama's funeral, and you cried and you said nice things, but then you told Papa he was doing everything wrong. You made him feel bad. You said I'd be better off without him. Tears were streaming down Lily's face now, but her voice remained clear. You said he was too sad to take care of me. You said he didn't love me enough. Margaret's composure cracked slightly. I never said that. I was concerned for your welfare. You were mean. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And when Papa hired ladies to help, you said they weren't good enough either. Nothing was ever good enough for you. But Clara is good enough. She's kind, and she stays, and she makes Papa smile again. We don't need you. We don't want you here. The raw honesty in the child's words hung in the air. Margaret's face flushed with anger, her careful mask slipping. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said sharply. The child is being raised without proper manners or respect for her elders. She needs discipline, structure. She needs to be loved, Clara said quietly. Every eye turned to her. And she is. Her father loves her. She has a home here and people who genuinely care about her well-being. That's worth more than all the music lessons and fancy dresses in Denver. Margaret rose from her chair, her eyes cold. And who are you to speak on family matters? You're the help. You have no standing here. She has every right to speak, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. And she's right. Lily is loved here. She's healing here. And she's not going anywhere. You're being foolish, Margaret snapped, her refined veneer completely gone now. This ranch is barely profitable. You're isolated, you're still grieving, and you're trying to raise a daughter with only a cook for female company. It's not enough, Ethan. You're not enough. Maybe I'm not, Ethan said, and Clara heard the old doubt creeping into his voice. Maybe I can't give her everything Catherine would have wanted, but I can give her something you can't, a father who will fight for her, who will listen to her, who will never send her away because she doesn't fit some image of perfection. This is ridiculous. Lily stays with me. Ethan's voice was firm now, no hesitation. That's not negotiable. If you truly cared about her, you'd respect what she wants instead of trying to force your vision of what her life should be. Margaret stared at him, her face rigid with fury. You're making a terrible mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. She's my daughter. Catherine would be ashamed of you. The words were designed to wound, and they did. Clara saw Ethan flinch. But before he could respond, Lily spoke up. No, she wouldn't. The girl's voice was clear and certain. Mama always said Papa was the bravest man she knew. She said he was brave enough to choose love even when it was hard. She told me that before she died. She said Papa would always know what to do because he loves me. Lily looked up at her father with absolute trust. And I know he loves me. I feel it now. Ethan's face crumpled with emotion. He dropped to one knee and pulled Lily into his arms, holding her tight. I do, little bird. I love you more than anything in this world. I'm sorry I forgot how to show you for a while. It's okay, Papa. You remember now. Clara's vision blurred with tears. She blinked away quickly. Across the room, Margaret watched the scene with barely disguised disgust. This is absurd, she said coldly. When you come to your senses, Ethan, when you realize you can't do this alone and this entire situation falls apart, don't come crying to me. I won't offer again. I won't need to, Ethan said, standing but keeping Lily close. We're not alone, and we're doing just fine. Margaret grabbed her gloves and swept toward the door. She paused in the threshold, looking back at Clara with contempt. I hope you know what you've gotten yourself into, Miss Whitmore. This family is broken. No amount of cooking and cleaning will fix it. You're wrong, Clara said quietly. They're not broken. They're healing. There's a difference. Margaret's laugh was sharp and bitter. We'll see how long you last when winter comes and you're trapped here with nothing but memories and regret for company. She left, climbing back into her wagon with the driver's assistance. They watched from the doorway as the wagon rolled away, disappearing down the road toward town. When the dust settled, Ethan closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking exhausted. I'm sorry you had to witness that, he said to Clara. Don't apologize. She was wrong about everything she said. Was she? He ran a hand through his hair. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am being selfish, keeping Lily here when she could have more in Denver. Papa, no. Lily pulled away from him, her expression fierce despite her tear-stained face. I don't want more. I want you. I want Clara. I want home. You heard what Margaret said about education, opportunities. We can teach her here, Clara interjected. I can teach her reading, writing, arithmetic. You can teach her about the ranch, about animals and weather and all the practical things she needs to know. She doesn't need Denver. She needs exactly what she has, parents who love her. Ethan's eyes snapped to hers. Parents? Clara felt heat flood her face. She hadn't meant to say that, hadn't meant to claim a role she had no right to. I meant people who care for her. I didn't mean to presume. Clara is like a mama, Lily said matter-of-factly. Not the same as Mama was, but she loves me. I know she does. The words hung in the air, impossible and true all at once. Clara looked at Lily, at this child who'd chosen her, who'd fought for her, who'd somehow seen in a desperate stranger the exact person their broken family needed. And she realized the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. I do, she whispered. I do love you, Lily. Lily smiled, bright and genuine and full of the confidence that comes from being truly, deeply certain of love. She took Clara's hand and her father's hand, holding them both. See? We're a family. Margaret doesn't understand, but we do. Ethan looked at Clara over his daughter's head, his expression complex and unreadable. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement of what Lily had said, recognition of what was growing between all of them, and the terrifying possibility of what that might mean. We should talk, he said quietly. Later, Clara agreed, after Lily's in bed. But later, when Lily had finally fallen asleep after the emotional upheaval of the day, neither of them knew how to begin. They sat at the table with coffee growing cold between them, the silence stretching. Outside, wind rattled the windows and the first spitting of rain began to fall, the storm that had been threatening all day finally arriving. I didn't hire you to be Lily's mother, Ethan finally said. I know. And I don't expect you to fill that role just because Margaret threw accusations around and Lily said what she said. I know that too. He looked at her directly. But you do love her. I heard it in your voice. You meant it. Clara met his gaze without flinching. Yes, I didn't plan to. I didn't come here looking for a family, but somehow in these past weeks, Lily has become... She paused, searching for words. She matters to me, deeply. I would do anything to protect her, to help her heal. Is that wrong? No. His voice was rough. Clara, it's the best thing that could have happened to her, to us. But I need to know what you want, what you expect. Because Lily's right, you're not just the cook anymore. You're part of this family, whether we planned it or not. And that changes things. How? Ethan stood and moved to the window, staring out at the rain-streaked darkness. Margaret was right about one thing. This ranch is isolated. Winter's coming, and we'll be snowed in for months at a time, just the three of us. If you're having doubts, if you think you might want to leave, now's the time, before we're all in too deep. Clara rose and moved to stand beside him. Do you want me to leave? No. The word came out fierce, almost angry. No, I don't want you to leave, but I need to know you're staying for the right reasons. Not because you promised Lily, not because you feel obligated, not because you have nowhere else to go. Then why? What would be the right reason? He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Because you want to be here. Because this place, this life, this family, because it's what you choose, not what you settle for. The rain hammered harder against the roof, lightning flickered in the distance, and thunder rolled across the prairie. In the lamplight, Ethan's face was all sharp angles and shadows, his expression raw with hope and fear. I choose this, Clara said softly. I choose Lily. I choose this ranch. I choose... She stopped, the next words too heavy, too dangerous. Say it, Ethan said, moving closer. Please, Clara, say it. I choose you. The admission came out barely above a whisper. I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated. I know I'm supposed to be the help, nothing more. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a job. You and Lily, you've become everything I didn't know I needed. Ethan closed the remaining distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. I was afraid, he said, afraid to feel anything again. Afraid that wanting you would be a betrayal of Catherine. Afraid that I'd fail again, that I'd hurt you the way I hurt Lily, by shutting down. His thumb brushed her cheek. But these past weeks, you've shown me something I'd forgotten, that the heart is bigger than we think, that love doesn't replace love. It just expands. And what I feel for you, Clara, it's real. It's terrifying, but it's real. Ethan, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Whatever you decide, whatever you want this to be, I'll respect it. But I had to be honest. I had to... Clara rose on her toes and kissed him. It was soft and brief. Nothing more than a brush of lips, but it silenced his words and answered his question. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and something that looked like wonder. I'm choosing this, she said again, more firmly. All of it. Whatever it means. Whatever it becomes. I'm choosing to stay. Ethan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Clara rested her head against his chest, hearing the rapid beat of his heart. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, in this small circle of lamplight and warmth, something new was being born. Something fragile, but growing stronger with each shared breath. They stood like that for a long time, not speaking, just holding each other while the rain fell and the night deepened. Finally, Ethan pressed a kiss to the top of her head and stepped back. We should take this slow, he said, for Lily's sake. Make sure she understands what's happening, that nothing's being forced. She already knows, Clara said with a small smile. That child is far more perceptive than either of us gives her credit for. She probably planned this too. Ethan laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine. Wouldn't surprise me. She's been orchestrating things from the beginning. They said goodnight with new awkwardness and new awareness, retiring to their separate rooms but carrying the knowledge that something fundamental had shifted. Clara lay in bed listening to the storm and thinking about promises made and futures uncertain, and for the first time in years she felt something that might be hope. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the storm having passed in the night. Clara came downstairs to find Lily already in the kitchen, setting the table with careful precision. The girl looked up as Clara entered, her expression knowing and pleased. Papa's smiling, she announced, really smiling, like he used to before Mama died. Is he? Mm-hmm. He was singing while he fed the horses. He never sings. Lily moved closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Did something happen after I went to bed? Clara felt heat creep into her cheeks. We talked, that's all. Just talked? Lily, it's okay. The girl's smile was impish.
I'm glad. I told you, you were the right one. I knew you'd make everything better. You're very sure of yourself, aren't you? Mama used to say I had good instincts. Lily's expression softened. She told me I'd always know who the good people were, the ones worth keeping, and I was right about you. Clara crouched down and pulled Lily into a hug. I was right about you, too. You're the bravest person I've ever met. Even though I tricked you into coming here? Especially because of that. They were still embracing when Ethan came in, bringing cold air and the smell of hay and horses with him. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene, and that new smile Lily had mentioned crossed his face. "Breakfast ready?" he asked. "Almost," Clara said, standing. "Give us 10 minutes." He nodded and moved to wash up, but not before his hand briefly touched Clara's shoulder as he passed. A small gesture, almost unconscious, but full of new intimacy. Lily noticed, of course. She noticed everything, and the satisfied look on her face said she approved completely. They ate breakfast together, conversation flowing more easily than it ever had before. Ethan told them about his plans for the day. Lily chattered about a book she wanted Clara to read to her. Clara mentioned needing to preserve the last of the garden vegetables before the freeze. It was ordinary, domestic, normal. And it was the most extraordinary thing Clara had ever experienced, this sense of belonging, of being woven into the fabric of daily life, of mattering not for what she could provide, but simply for being herself. After breakfast, as Clara washed dishes and Lily dried, the girl spoke quietly. "Clara, do you think Mama would like you?" The question caught Clara off guard. "I don't know, sweetness. I never met her." "Papa says she would. He told me this morning." Lily carefully dried a plate. "He said Mama always wanted him to be happy, that she'd be glad he found someone like you." Clara's hand stilled in the wash water. "He said that?" "Mm-hmm. He said Mama wouldn't want us to be sad forever. She'd want us to live and love and be a family again." Lily looked up, her blue eyes serious. "Is that what we are now? A family?" Clara thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The lies that became truth, the strangers who became essential, the broken pieces slowly knitting back together. She thought about Lily's determination, Ethan's courage to feel again, and her own leap of faith in choosing to stay. "Yes," she said softly, "I think we are. Or we're becoming one. Is that okay with you?" Lily smiled, that bright, genuine smile that transformed her whole face. "It's perfect." And in that moment, with autumn sun streaming through the windows and the promise of winter on the horizon, Clara believed her. It wasn't perfect in any traditional sense. They were still learning each other, still healing from old wounds, still figuring out how to build something new from the rubble of what had been lost. But it was theirs. Chosen, fought for, and earned through honesty and courage and the willingness to take risks on each other. And that, Clara thought, as she returned to the dishes while Lily hummed beside her, was more than perfect enough. The weeks that followed Margaret's visit brought a kind of peace Clara had never known existed. October gave way to November, and the prairie transformed into shades of gold and brown under vast gray skies. The days grew shorter, the air sharper, and the evenings longer around the fire. Ethan worked from dawn to dusk, preparing the ranch for winter, mending fences, reinforcing the barn, stockpiling firewood and feed. Clara preserved vegetables, made soap, and sewed warmer clothes for Lily from fabric Ethan brought from town. And Lily moved between them like a small sun, bringing light wherever she went, her voice growing stronger every day. They fell into rhythms that felt like they'd existed forever. Mornings began with breakfast together, Ethan and Lily lingering at the table even after they'd finished eating, just to talk. Lily would tell elaborate stories about the chickens' secret lives, making her father laugh until tears gathered in his eyes. Clara would listen and interject questions, drawing the stories out, watching the way Ethan's face had softened, how he'd leaned toward his daughter now instead of away. In the afternoons, while Ethan worked outside, Clara taught Lily to read and write and cipher. They'd sit at the table with borrowed books from Mrs. Chen and paper Ethan had bought specially for lessons. Lily proved quick and eager, absorbing everything Clara could teach her. "What's this word?" Lily would ask, pointing to the page. "Sound it out," Clara would encourage. "What do you think?"
and Lily would puzzle through it, her small face scrunched in concentration, until understanding dawned, and she'd look up triumphant. Those moments of breakthrough became Clara's favorite, watching this child who'd been so silent, so withdrawn, now hungry for knowledge and connection. Evenings were for all of them together. Ethan would come in from the cold, wash up, and join them by the fire. Sometimes Clara would read aloud while Lily sat on her father's lap, and Ethan listened with his eyes closed, his hand stroking his daughter's hair. Sometimes they'd play simple games, checkers or cards, with Lily taking fierce joy in beating her father. And sometimes they'd just talk, sharing stories from their days, making plans, building the foundation of something that felt increasingly like family. But beneath the surface peace, Clara felt the weight of unspoken questions. She and Ethan had shared that one kiss, that one moment of honest confession, but neither had spoken of it since. They moved around each other carefully, aware of the new current between them, but uncertain how to navigate it with Lily watching everything, with the memory of Catherine still present in the house, with the reality of Clara's uncertain position. She was more than a cook, but less than a wife. More than hired help, but not quite family by law. She existed in this liminal space, and as winter approached, she wondered how long that could last. The answer came on a snowy evening in late November. Clara was baking bread, her hands dusted with flour, when Ethan came in from checking the horses. Snow clung to his coat and hat, and his cheeks were red from cold. He stamped his boots at the door and hung up his outer clothes, but instead of heading to wash up, he stood watching Clara work. "Where's Lily?" he asked. "Upstairs, playing with her doll. Why?" "I need to talk to you." "Alone." Something in his tone made Clara's heart skip. She wiped her hands on her apron. "All right." Ethan moved to the table and sat, gesturing for her to join him. She did, suddenly nervous without knowing why. "Margaret sent a letter," he said without preamble. Clara's stomach dropped. "What did she say?" "She's not giving up. She's filed papers with the territorial court, claiming I'm unfit to raise Lily. She's petitioning for guardianship." His voice was tight with controlled anger. "Her lawyer says they have a case. Isolated ranch, no proper schooling, no female influence beyond hired help." "That's ridiculous. Lily is thriving. I know that, you know that. But Margaret's painting a picture of neglect and impropriety. She's claiming that having an unmarried woman living here, no matter how respectable, creates an inappropriate environment for a child." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "The hearing is set for January. The territorial judge will visit to assess the situation." Clara felt cold spreading through her chest. "So she's using me against you. My presence here is making things worse." "No." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "You're the best thing that's happened to us. But Margaret's twisting everything. She's making it sound improper, even scandalous." "Then I'll leave." The words hurt to say, but Clara forced them out. "If my being here endangers Lily, I'll go. You can tell the judge you've dismissed me, that you've made other arrangements." "Stop." Ethan's grip tightened on her hand. "That's not the solution. Lily needs you. I need you. And Margaret would just find some other angle to attack from." "Then what do we do?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his thumb absently stroking the back of Clara's hand. When he spoke, his voice was low and careful. "There's one way to end this. One way to prove to the court that Lily has a stable, proper home with appropriate female guidance." Clara's heart began to pound. "What way?" He met her eyes directly. "Marry me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication and consequence. "Ethan, I know it's not romantic. I know it's not what either of us imagined. But it makes sense, Clara. Think about it. If we're married, Margaret's entire case falls apart. Lily would have a mother figure legally. The court would have no grounds to remove her. And we—" He paused. "We already live like a family. This would just make it official." Clara's mind raced. Marriage, to Ethan. It would solve everything practically, legally, but it would also bind her to this place, to this life, in a way she couldn't undo. And what about love? What about the slow, fragile thing growing between them that hadn't yet been named or tested? "What about Catherine?" she asked quietly. "What about her? Would you be marrying me just to protect Lily? Would I always be second choice, the practical solution instead of—" She couldn't finish. Ethan stood and came around the table, pulling Clara to her feet. He held both her hands, his expression intense. You think I'd ask you to marry me if I didn't care about you? If I didn't want you in my life beyond just solving this problem with Margaret? I don't know. I don't know what you feel. We've barely talked about that night, about what you said, because I was trying to give you space, trying not to push. He cupped her face in his hands, the same gesture as before, but more certain now. Clara, I loved Catherine. I'll always love her. She was my first love, the mother of my child, and losing her nearly destroyed me. But what I feel for you, it's not less because it's different. It's not second choice because it came second. You've brought me back to life. You've made me want to feel again, to hope again. And yes, marrying you would protect Lily. But I'd want to marry you even if Margaret didn't exist. I'd want you here, in my life, in my home, as my partner, not as the help, not as a solution. As my wife. Clara's eyes stung with tears. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything, except, he hesitated. I need to know what you want, not what's practical, not what helps Lily. What do you want, Clara? She thought about the question, really thought about it. What did she want? She wanted this man who'd learned to be vulnerable again, this child who'd chosen her, this life they were building together, one careful day at a time. She wanted the mornings and the evenings and the quiet moments in between. She wanted to belong somewhere, to someone, not out of desperation, but out of choice. I want this, she said. I want you. I want Lily. I want to make this family real and legal and permanent. Yes, Ethan, yes, I'll marry you. The relief and joy that flooded his face made him look 10 years younger. He kissed her then, not soft and questioning like before, but deep and sure and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. We'll do it right, he said. Small ceremony, just us and a few witnesses, before the judge visits. And Clara, I promise you, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes. I won't regret it, she said with certainty. Footsteps on the stairs made them step apart. Lily appeared, her doll tucked under one arm, and stopped when she saw them standing close together, both flushed and smiling. What's happening? She asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. Ethan crouched down to her level. Come here, little bird. We need to talk to you about something important. Lily approached cautiously. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart. The opposite. He glanced at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. You know how you said we were becoming a family? Yes? Well, Clara and I have decided to make it official. If you're all right with it, I'm going to ask her to marry me. That would make her your stepmother. Would that be okay with you? Lily looked from her father to Clara and back again. Her expression was unreadable, and for a moment Clara's heart clenched with fear that they'd moved too fast, assumed too much. Then Lily launched herself at Clara, wrapping her arms around her waist. Really? You'll really stay forever? Clara hugged her back, relief making her weak. Really? Forever. And you'll be my mama? Not just Clara? Clara felt Ethan's eyes on her, felt the weight of what was being asked. Lily wasn't trying to replace Catherine. That was clear in the way she still spoke about her mother, still treasured her memories. But she was asking for permission to love again, to have a mother figure in her present even while honoring the one in her past. I'll be whatever you need me to be, Clara said carefully. I could never replace your first mama, but I can love you just as much, in my own way. Would that be enough? Lily pulled back and looked up at her with those wise, too old eyes. Mama told me something before she died. She said hearts are big enough for lots of love. She said if Papa ever found someone new to love, I should be happy because more love is always good. She said, her voice wavered. She said she wanted us to be happy, even after she was gone. Ethan made a choked sound and pulled both of them close, his arms around his daughter and the woman who would become his wife. They stood like that for a long moment, three people bound by loss and hope and the courage to try again. When they finally separated, Lily was beaming. When's the wedding? Can I help? Can I wear my best dress? Ethan laughed, wiping his eyes. Soon, before Christmas. And yes, you can wear your best dress and help with everything. Can we have cake? Definitely cake, Clara promised. Lily spun in a circle, her doll flying out from her arms. I knew it! I knew you were the right one. I told Mrs. Chen you were perfect, and I was right. She danced around the kitchen, singing to herself, leaving Ethan and Clara to exchange looks of amused wonder at the child's absolute confidence in her own judgment. That night, after Lily had finally gone to bed, still chattering about wedding plans, Clara and Ethan sat by the fire talking through the practicalities. They'd ride to town in 2 days to speak with Reverend Walsh about performing the ceremony. They'd need witnesses, Mrs. Chen, certainly, and perhaps the banker and his wife who Ethan knew from business dealings. They'd keep it simple, private, focused on what mattered rather than appearances. We should write to Margaret, Clara said. Tell her about the marriage before the hearing. Let her find out from the court paperwork, Ethan said grimly. She doesn't deserve consideration. She's still Catherine's family and Lily's. She's a viper who tried to steal my daughter. I know, but taking the high road will look better to the judge. Show that we're reasonable, stable people who tried to include family. Clara touched his arm gently. Besides, I don't want to start our marriage with spite and secrecy. Let's tell her honestly and let her reaction be her own. Ethan sighed but nodded. You're right. You're annoyingly right. How are you so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of ugliness. I've seen enough of people's worst. I'd rather try for their best, even when they don't deserve it. He pulled her close, kissing her temple. That's why Lily chose you, you know. You're genuinely good. It's not an act or a pretense, it's just who you are. I'm not that good. You are. And I'm grateful every day that you walked onto this ranch. That my daughter was smart enough and brave enough to bring you here. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down, both thinking about the future rushing toward them. So much had changed in just 3 months. Clara had arrived expecting nothing more than survival, and now she was planning a wedding, preparing to become a mother, building a life she'd never dared to imagine. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of preparations. They rode to town through light snow, Lily bundled between them in the wagon, chattering non-stop about wedding plans. Reverend Walsh agreed immediately to perform the ceremony, his kind eyes crinkling with approval when he saw how Ethan looked at Clara and how Lily beamed at both of them. It's good to see you living again, Ethan, the Reverend said. Catherine would be glad. Mrs. Chen, when asked to be a witness, actually cried and hugged Clara fiercely. I knew, she said through tears. When Lily asked me to help find someone, I prayed it would work out like this. That child has the sight. I swear it. They set the date for 3 weeks hence, the second Saturday in December. Ethan bought Clara a simple gold band and a bolt of dark blue fabric for a new dress. Clara protested the expense, but he was adamant. You deserve something new for your wedding day. Something that's yours, chosen for you, not hand-me-down or make do. The words touched something deep in Clara's heart. She'd worn other people's cast-offs for so long, made do with so little. The idea of something new, something chosen specifically for her, felt almost decadent. Back at the ranch, she spent her evenings sewing the dress while Lily helped, pinning hems, threading needles, offering opinions on whether the collar should be plain or laced. It was simple work, but it felt sacred somehow, like every stitch was binding her more firmly to this new life. A week before the wedding, the letter arrived. Clara recognized Margaret's elegant handwriting on the envelope. Ethan's jaw tightened when he saw it, but he opened it and read aloud. The letter was cold and formal. Margaret expressed her disappointment at hearing rumors of a hasty marriage. She questioned Clara's motives and suggested Ethan was being taken advantage of by a scheming woman who saw an opportunity. She claimed any judge would see through such a transparent attempt to avoid proper scrutiny of Lily's living situation. She ended by saying she would proceed with her petition regardless and looked forward to presenting her case in January. She's horrible, Lily said from where she was listening by the stove. She's frightened, Claire corrected gently. She thinks she's fighting for you, Lily. She's wrong about everything, but in her mind she believes she's doing the right thing. You're defending her? Ethan asked incredulously. I'm trying to understand her. There's a difference. Clara took the letter and folded it carefully. She lost Catherine too. Maybe this is her way of trying to hold on to that connection, by taking care of Catherine's daughter. By trying to steal her from her father. I didn't say it was right. I said I understood where it might be coming from. Clara looked at Lily. Your aunt loved your mother. That love is making her do foolish things, but it's still love underneath. Lily considered this. Mama always said Aunt Margaret was complicated. She said some people show love by trying to control things because they're scared. Your mama was very wise, Clara said. Do you think we should invite her? Lily asked. To the wedding? Both adults stared at her. Absolutely not, Ethan said. But if we did, it might show her that Clara's good, that we're happy. Maybe she'd stop being so mean. Lily, that's very generous, but I think she should come, Lily insisted. I think Mama would want us to try. One more time. Clara looked at Ethan, seeing her own uncertainty reflected in his face. Inviting Margaret was either the most mature thing they could do or the most foolish. But Lily was right. Catherine would probably have wanted them to extend the olive branch, to try for peace even in the face of hostility. If we invite her, she might cause a scene, Ethan warned. She might, Clara agreed, but she might also see what we've built here and realize Lily really is happy. It's worth the risk, isn't it? Ethan looked at his daughter, who was watching him with hopeful eyes, then at Clara, who was willing to risk her own wedding day to do the right thing by his late wife's family. He sighed deeply. Fine. We'll send her an invitation, but if she causes any trouble, any at all, she's out. Agreed? Agreed, Clara and Lily said in unison. They sent the letter the next day. It was brief and simple. They were getting married on December 14th at the Harlan Ranch. If Margaret wished to attend and could behave with courtesy and respect, she would be welcome. If not, she could stay away. The days until the wedding seemed to fly and drag simultaneously. Clara finished her dress and hung it carefully in her room. Lily helped her bake and freeze cakes in the cold cellar. Ethan cleaned the house from top to bottom and built up the woodpile so they'd have plenty of fuel for any guests who might linger. The morning before the wedding, Clara woke to Lily standing beside her bed. Clara, are you awake? I am now. Clara sat up, rubbing her eyes. What's wrong, sweetness? Nothing's wrong. Lily climbed onto the bed and sat cross-legged, her expression serious. I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow. Clara came fully awake, sensing something important. All right, what is it? I want you to know something about Mama. Lily twisted her hands together. She was wonderful. She laughed all the time, and she told the best stories, and she made Papa smile every day. She was magic, kind of, like sunshine. She sounds wonderful. She was, and I loved her so much. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I still love her. I'll always love her. She's my first mama, and nobody can ever change that. I know, sweetheart. I would never try to, but I love you too. The words came out in a rush. Different, but just as real. And I wanted you to know that it's okay. That Mama would say it's okay. That loving you doesn't mean forgetting her. Hearts are big enough for both. Clara's own eyes stung. She pulled Lily into her arms, holding her tight. Thank you for telling me that. It means more than you know. Tomorrow, when you marry Papa, you'll really be my mama. Not instead of her, but along with her. Lily pulled back, looking at Clara seriously. Is that okay? Can I have 2 mamas? Oh, sweetheart, you can have as many mamas as your heart needs. And I promise, I'll never ask you to forget her. She's part of you, part of your story. I'm just grateful I get to be part of your story too. Lily nodded, satisfied. Then she smiled. That bright, confident smile Clara had come to love. Tomorrow's going to be perfect. I just know it. Clara hoped she was right. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, with fresh snow sparkling on the ground. Clara woke early and put on her new dress, her hands shaking slightly as she buttoned it. The dark blue fabric was simple but well made, fitted at the waist and falling in soft folds to her ankles. She'd never owned anything so fine. Lily helped her pin up her hair, chattering excitedly about how pretty Clara looked and how Papa was going to forget how to talk when he saw her. Clara laughed despite her nerves, grateful for the girl's enthusiasm. Downstairs she could hear activity, voices, footsteps. The guests had begun to arrive. Reverend Walsh, Mrs. Chen, the banker and his wife. And then another voice, cool and familiar. Margaret had come. Clara's heart sank and lifted simultaneously. Margaret's presence meant potential trouble. But it also meant she'd accepted the invitation, taken the first step toward possible reconciliation.
Ready? Lily asked, taking Clara's hand. Ready, Clara said, though she wasn't sure she meant it. They descended the stairs together, and every eye turned toward them. Mrs. Chen beamed. The banker's wife looked approving. Reverend Walsh smiled warmly, and Margaret stood near the fireplace in a gray dress, her expression carefully neutral. She looked at Clara with those assessing eyes, taking in every detail. For a moment, Clara thought she saw a surprise there, perhaps even grudging respect, but then Margaret's face smoothed into polite blankness. And Ethan. Ethan stood near the window in his best suit, looking more handsome than Clara had ever seen him. When his eyes found her, his whole face transformed. Lily had been right. He looked struck speechless, like he was seeing something miraculous. He crossed to her, taking her hand. "You're beautiful," he said quietly, just for her. "So are you," she whispered back, making him smile. Reverend Walsh called them to order, positioning them before the fireplace. Lily stood between them, holding both their hands, grinning like she'd orchestrated the whole universe to bring them to this moment. The ceremony itself was brief and simple. No grand speeches or elaborate rituals, just honest vows spoken in quiet voices, witnessed by the small gathering. Ethan promised to love and honor her, to be faithful and true. Clara promised the same. The Reverend blessed their union. They exchanged rings, and then Ethan kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise, while everyone applauded and Lily cheered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reverend Walsh announced with a smile, "may I present Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Hale." Mrs. Hale. Clara Hale. The name felt strange and wonderful all at once.
They celebrated with cake and coffee, with conversation and congratulations. Margaret remained quiet through most of it, observing but not participating. Finally, as guests began to depart, she approached Clara and Ethan where they stood together. "Might I speak with you both?" she asked. "And Lily?" Ethan tensed, but Clara squeezed his hand. "Of course." Margaret looked at Lily first. "I owe you an apology, Lily. I've been trying to do what I thought was right, but I wasn't listening to what you wanted. I'm sorry." Lily blinked in surprise. "Okay." Margaret turned to Ethan. "And I owe you an apology as well. I let my grief for Catherine turn into something ugly. I convinced myself you couldn't give Lily what she needed, when the truth is I was the one who couldn't see what was right in front of me." "Margaret," Ethan started, clearly shocked. "She's happy," Margaret said simply, looking at Lily. "Really happy. I've been watching her today, and she's nothing like the withdrawn, silent child I saw at Catherine's funeral. She's alive again, and that's because of both of you." She looked at Clara. "I judged you unfairly. I thought you were some opportunist taking advantage of Ethan's grief, but I can see I was wrong. You love them, both of them. It's obvious." Clara didn't know what to say. This was not the Margaret they'd been dealing with. "I'm withdrawing my petition," Margaret continued. "I'll write to the court tomorrow. Lily should stay here with her father. And with you, Clara." She paused, something vulnerable crossing her face. "I hope, perhaps someday, I might be allowed to visit. To know my cousin's daughter as she grows up. Not to take her away, just to be part of her life." Lily looked up at Clara and Ethan. "Can she?" Ethan's jaw worked with emotion. "Yes. Yes, Margaret. You're welcome to visit your family. Complicated family, but family nonetheless." Margaret's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "Thank you, and I'm sorry for all of it." She left shortly after, and when the door closed behind her, Ethan let out a long breath. "Well, that was unexpected." "Hearts change," Clara said softly, "when people let them." He pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Speaking from experience?" "Maybe." Lily tugged on both their hands. "Can we have more cake now, since it's a celebration?" They laughed and said yes, and spent the rest of the evening as a new family, eating cake, talking by the fire, making plans for the future. And when Lily finally fell asleep on the sofa between them, Ethan carried her upstairs while Clara banked the fire. When he came back down, they stood together in the kitchen where it had all begun 3 months ago, where a desperate woman had arrived expecting only survival and found instead a home. "No regrets?" Ethan asked, pulling Clara into his arms. "Not a single one," she said, and meant it with her whole heart. The first morning of Clara's marriage began before dawn, with Ethan's arm draped across her waist and the unfamiliar weight of the gold band on her finger catching the pale light filtering through the window. She lay still for a moment, absorbing the reality of where she was and what had changed. Mrs. Ethan Hale, wife, stepmother? The words still felt foreign, like clothes that didn't quite fit yet but would stretch and soften with time. Beside her, Ethan slept peacefully, his face relaxed in a way she rarely saw during waking hours. The lines of grief and worry had eased, and he looked younger, almost boyish in the gray morning light. Clara carefully slipped from the bed, wrapped herself in a robe, and padded downstairs to start the fire and make coffee. The house was cold and silent, but it was a comfortable silence now, full of promise rather than emptiness. As she worked, she found herself smiling at nothing in particular, just the simple joy of being here, of belonging. She was rolling out biscuit dough when small footsteps sounded on the stairs. Lily appeared in her nightgown, her dark hair tangled from sleep, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, sweetness," Clara said softly. Lily climbed onto a chair and watched Clara work. "Is it different?" she asked after a moment. "Is what different?" "Being married. Does it feel different?" Clara considered the question. "A little. Everything's the same, but also not the same. Does that make sense?" "Not really." Lily tilted her head. "Are you happy?" "Very happy." "Good." Lily reached out and touched the flour-dusted work surface, drawing a small heart with her finger. "I'm happy too. It feels right now. Like all the broken pieces finally fit together." Clara's throat tightened with emotion. "That's exactly what it feels like." They heard Ethan moving around upstairs, and soon he joined them, freshly washed and dressed for the day's work. He stopped behind Clara, wrapped his arms around her waist, and pressed a kiss to her temple. A casual intimacy that was new and thrilling and perfectly natural all at once. "Good morning, wife," he murmured. "Good morning, husband," Clara replied, the word tasting strange but sweet on her tongue. Lily made a gagging sound. "Are you going to be mushy all the time now?" "Absolutely," Ethan said with a grin, releasing Clara to ruffle his daughter's hair. "Better get used to it." They ate breakfast together as the sun rose, painting the snow-covered prairie in shades of pink and gold. Ethan talked about his plans for the day, checking the cattle, reinforcing the barn door that had been sticking. Clara mentioned needing to take inventory of their supplies before the deep winter set in. Lily asked if she could help with both, and they agreed to divide her time between them. It was ordinary, domestic, exactly what Clara had never dared to hope for. After breakfast, Ethan headed out to the barn and Lily went to change into warmer clothes. Clara was washing dishes when she heard the sound of a horse approaching. She dried her hands and went to the window, her heart sinking slightly when she saw who it was. The territorial judge. He was early. The hearing wasn't supposed to be until January. But here he was, dismounting from a sturdy bay horse, his official satchel slung over his shoulder. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair and a weathered face that spoke of years spent traveling the territory settling disputes. Clara called for Ethan, who came quickly from the barn, his expression guarded. Together they went out to meet the judge. "Judge Morrison," Ethan said, extending his hand. "We weren't expecting you until next month." "Change of plans," the judge said, shaking hands firmly. He had kind eyes, Clara noted, but shrewd ones. "When I received Mrs. Thornton's notice withdrawing her petition, I thought I'd ride out anyway. Make sure everything's as it should be. If you don't mind, that is." "Of course not," Clara said quickly. "Please, come inside. It's cold out here." They settled him at the table with hot coffee, and Lily appeared from upstairs, stopping short when she saw the stranger. "Lily, come here," Ethan said gently. "This is Judge Morrison. He's here to visit for a bit." Lily approached cautiously, but with her head held high. "Hello, sir." "Hello, young lady." The judge studied her with those sharp eyes. "You must be the famous Lily I've been hearing about." "I don't know about famous," Lily said seriously, "but I'm Lily." "Tell me, Lily, are you happy here?" It was a direct question, and Lily answered it directly. "Yes, sir, very happy." "Even though your aunt thought you might be better off in Denver?" "Aunt Margaret was wrong. She knows that now. She said so at the wedding yesterday." The judge's eyebrows rose. Wedding? Papa married Clara, Lily said proudly. She's my stepmother now. She's been teaching me to read and write and make pie and lots of other things. Judge Morrison turned his attention to Clara. Mrs. Hale, is it now? Yes, sir, as of yesterday. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? There was no accusation in his tone, just curiosity, but Clara felt her spine straighten. It might seem that way, but the truth is we would have married regardless of Mrs. Thornton's petition. We were already planning it when her letter arrived. Is that so? The judge sipped his coffee, his gaze moving between Ethan and Clara, assessing. And how long have you known each other? 3 months, Ethan said. Clara came here in September as our cook and, well, things developed from there. Quickly, it would seem. When you know, Ethan said simply. And we knew. Judge Morrison turned back to Lily. Tell me about your mother, child. Lily's expression softened. Mama died a year ago. She was wonderful. I loved her very much. Do you feel like Clara is trying to replace her? No, sir. Nobody could replace Mama. But Clara loves me anyway, in her own way. Mama told me before she died that hearts are big enough for lots of love. She was right. Lily moved to stand beside Clara's chair, placing her small hand on Clara's shoulder. I have 2 mamas now, one in heaven and one here. I'm lucky. Something shifted in the judge's expression, a softening around his eyes. You're a wise child, Lily Hale. Thank you, sir. He stayed for 2 hours, asking questions, observing, taking notes. He walked through the house with Ethan, examined Lily's primer and slate, checked the pantry and the woodpile. He asked Clara about her background, her intentions, her plans for Lily's education. He questioned Ethan about the ranch's finances, about Catherine's death, about how he'd managed his grief. Through it all, they answered honestly, holding nothing back. They had nothing to hide. Their family might have formed in an unconventional way, but it was built on genuine love and commitment. Finally, as the judge prepared to leave, he pulled out his official notebook and made several notations. Then he looked up at the 3 of them standing together on the porch. I'll be frank with you, he said. When I received Mrs. Thornton's petition, I was concerned. A widower raising a young daughter alone on an isolated ranch. It raised legitimate questions about the child's welfare. But having been here, having seen you all together, I have no concerns whatsoever. Relief flooded through Clara so powerfully she felt dizzy. Lily is clearly thriving, the judge continued. She's well fed, well cared for, and receiving an education appropriate to her age and circumstances. More importantly, she's loved. That's evident in every interaction I've witnessed. He looked at Clara. Mrs. Haley, I don't know if your marriage was prompted by the petition or would have happened anyway, and frankly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're providing this child with stability, affection, and a proper home. Thank you, sir, Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. As for you, Mr. Hale, you're doing right by your daughter. Catherine would be proud. He tipped his hat. I'll file my report stating that Lily Hale is in appropriate care and no court intervention is necessary. Mrs. Thornton's withdrawal of her petition stands, and this matter is closed. After the judge left, the 3 of them stood on the porch, watching him ride away until he disappeared over the horizon. Then Ethan let out a long, shuddering breath and pulled both Clara and Lily into his arms. It's over, he said. It's really over. We did it, Lily said, her voice muffled against his chest. We're a real family now, official and everything. Clara said nothing, just held tight to these 2 people who'd become her entire world and let the relief wash through her. They'd been tested, by Margaret, by the court, by circumstances beyond their control, and they'd emerged intact. Stronger, even. The days that followed settled into a new rhythm, deeper and more secure than before. Winter closed in fully, bringing snow that piled high against the house and wind that howled through the nights. They were isolated now, cut off from town until the spring thaw. But instead of feeling trapped, Clara felt cocooned, safe. The 3 of them fell into patterns of togetherness that felt both new and ancient. Mornings began with Clara and Lily cooking breakfast while Ethan tended the animals. Middays were for lessons, Clara teaching Lily letters and numbers, while Ethan worked on ranch accounts nearby. occasionally interjecting with stories about cattle prices or weather patterns that made learning feel alive and relevant. Afternoons were for work and play, all of them bundled in layers against the cold, building snow forts and feeding chickens and mending tack. But it was the evenings Clara treasured most. After supper, they'd gather by the fire, and Ethan would read aloud from books he'd borrowed before the snow came. Adventure stories that made Lily gasp with excitement, poetry that made Clara's eyes sting with its beauty. Sometimes Lily would fall asleep in her father's lap while he read, and Clara would watch them together, her heart so full it ached. On those nights, after they'd carried Lily upstairs and tucked her in, Clara and Ethan would return to the fire and sit close together, talking quietly about everything and nothing. He told her more about Catherine, not with the raw grief of before, but with fondness and peace. She told him about her parents, about the loneliness of her years in Cheyenne, about how close she'd come to giving up entirely. "I'm glad you didn't," Ethan said one night, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the flames dance. "I'm glad you held on long enough for Lily to find you." "I'm glad she was stubborn enough to keep looking," Clara replied. "She gets that from Catherine, that determination to make things right, no matter what it takes." He was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I used to feel guilty. About you. About what I was starting to feel. Like being happy again meant forgetting Catherine, betraying her memory." He tightened his arm around Clara. "But I don't feel that anymore. I think Catherine would have liked this, liked you. She always said love multiplies, it doesn't divide, that there's always room for more in the human heart. Lily said something similar, that her mother told her hearts are big enough for lots of love. Catherine believed that deeply. She would have wanted us to heal, to find joy again. She would have wanted Lily to have a mother, even if it wasn't her." He turned Clara's face toward his eyes serious in the firelight. "Thank you for giving me permission to love again. Thank you for being patient while I figured out how." Clara kissed him softly. "Thank you for taking the risk, for letting me in." As Christmas approached, they made preparations together. Ethan cut a small pine tree and brought it inside, filling the house with the scent of evergreen. Clara and Lily made decorations from scraps of fabric and bits of ribbon, hanging them on the branches with ceremony and laughter. They baked cookies and pies, filling the house with warmth and sweetness. On Christmas Eve, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan presented Clara with a small wooden box. "I made this," he said, almost shy. "It's not much, but—" Clara opened it carefully. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft cloth, was a wooden carving, a perfect miniature of the three of them standing together. The detail was exquisite, each face recognizable, each figure positioned so they formed a unified whole. "Ethan," she breathed, "this is beautiful. I wanted you to have something that showed us as we are now, a family. The family Lily built by refusing to give up hope." He touched the carving gently. "The family you completed by saying yes." Clara's vision blurred with tears. "I don't have anything nearly this special for you. You gave me yourself. You gave Lily a mother. You gave us both a reason to keep living instead of just surviving. That's more than enough." He closed the box carefully and set it aside, then pulled Clara close. "You're more than enough. You always were." They made love that night in front of the dying fire, slow and tender and full of promises spoken and unspoken. And afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other, Clara felt a completeness she'd never known existed. This was home. These people were hers, and she was theirs, bound not by blood or obligation, but by choice. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, the sun glinting off fresh snow in blinding brilliance. Lily woke them early, bouncing on their bed with excitement, and they dressed quickly and went downstairs to exchange simple gifts. Ethan gave Lily a new doll he'd ordered from Cheyenne before the snow came. Clara gave her a set of hair ribbons she'd sewn herself. Lily gave them each drawings she'd made. One of Clara in the kitchen, one of Ethan with the horses, both rendered with a child's earnest detail and love. They spent the day together in perfect contentment, playing games and eating too much pie and telling stories. As evening fell and Lily finally exhausted herself into sleep on the sofa, Clara and Ethan sat on either side of her, watching her peaceful face in the firelight.
Do you think she knows? Ethan asked quietly. How much she saved us. I think she knows she brought us together. I don't think she understands yet how extraordinary that is, how brave she had to be to make it happen. We should tell her, when she's older, make sure she knows. We will, Clara promised. We'll tell her the whole story, how a 6-year-old girl refused to accept that her family was broken beyond repair, how she searched until she found exactly the right person to help heal them, how her courage and stubbornness and hope brought all of us back to life. Ethan reached across Lily's sleeping form and took Clara's hand. Some families are born, he said softly, and some families are built by the bravest hearts of all. Clara squeezed his hand, thinking about how far they'd all come. 3 broken people brought together by a child's desperate hope and a series of choices that could have gone so differently. If Lily hadn't been brave enough to reject the wrong people, if Mrs. Chen hadn't been kind enough to help, if Clara hadn't been desperate enough to answer a letter about a job that didn't exist, if Ethan hadn't been strong enough to wake from his grief, if any of them had given up. But they hadn't given up. They'd chosen each other again and again, in small ways and large. They'd chosen to be honest, to be vulnerable, to take risks on love even when it was terrifying. And in doing so, they'd created something real and lasting and beautiful. Winter deepened and the ranch became their entire world. Some days the snow fell so thick they couldn't see the barn from the house. Other days the sky was so clear and blue it hurt to look at. Through it all, they stayed close, working together, learning each other's rhythms, becoming the family they'd committed to being. Clara taught Lily to bake bread and sew straight seams and read with expression. Ethan taught her to recognize animal tracks in the snow and predict weather by watching the sky and calculate feed ratios for the livestock. Together, all 3 of them played elaborate games of pretend, built snow sculptures, and read every book in the house twice over. In February, a letter arrived with the first rider to make it through after a blizzard. It was from Margaret, formal but kind, asking permission to visit in the spring. She enclosed a small gift for Lily, a hair comb that had belonged to Catherine. She's trying, Ethan said, reading the letter. Really trying. Should we let her come? Clara asked. What do you think? Clara considered. Margaret had caused them pain and fear, but she'd also stepped back when she saw the truth. She'd apologized and meant it. And she was Lily's family, a connection to Catherine that might matter as Lily grew older. I think we should let her come. Not because we owe her anything, but because forgiveness is how we break cycles of pain. We forgive her. She gets to be part of Lily's life, and everyone heals a little more. Ethan kissed her temple. How did I get so lucky? To find someone as wise as she is kind? I think you had help, Clara said with a smile. From a very determined matchmaker who happens to be 7 now. They showed Lily the letter and the gift. The girl's eyes grew wide when she saw the comb. This was Mama's, she whispered, touching it reverently. I remember her wearing it. Your aunt wants to visit in the spring, Ethan said. Would that be all right with you? Lily thought about it seriously. Will she be nice? I think so. She's trying to be better. Then yes, she can come. Lily looked up at Clara. Is that okay with you? Clara felt a rush of love for this child who was always thinking of others, always making sure everyone was considered. It's more than okay. She's your family, Lily, and family is important, even when it's complicated. Like us, Lily said matter-of-factly. We were complicated at first, but we figured it out. Yes, we did, Clara agreed, and we'll keep figuring things out together for as long as we need to. March brought the first thaw, the snow retreating in patches to reveal brown grass and mud. The world felt raw and new, full of possibility. Ethan began preparing for spring planting and calf season. Clara started seedlings in the kitchen for the garden. Lily helped with everything, her hands always busy, her voice always full of questions and observations. One morning, as Clara was kneading bread and Lily was practicing her letters at the table, the girl looked up suddenly. Clara, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetness. When you first came here, were you scared? Clara paused in her work, considering how to answer honestly. Yes, I was very scared. I didn't know your father, I didn't know you, and I was worried I wouldn't be good enough.
that I'd fail and have to leave and be alone again. But you stayed anyway. I did. Why? Clara moved to sit beside Lily, flowers still dusting her hands. Because even though I was scared, I was also hopeful. And hope is stronger than fear if you're brave enough to hold on to it. Lily nodded seriously. I was scared too. When Mama died and Papa was so sad and nothing felt right anymore, I was scared we'd be broken forever. But you didn't let that stop you from trying to fix things. No, because Mama told me something important before she died. She said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you're scared. Lily looked up at Clara with those wise, ancient eyes. You were brave, Papa was brave, and I was brave. That's why we worked. Clara pulled Lily into her lap, holding her close. You're absolutely right. We were all brave, and we all chose each other, and that's why we're a family now. I'm glad I found you, Lily whispered against Clara's shoulder. I'm glad you found me too. They sat like that for a long moment, the spring sun streaming through the windows, the bread dough rising on the counter, the world waking up around them. And Clara thought about how strange and miraculous life was, how the worst moments could lead to the best ones, how loss could somehow become gain, how the end of one story could be the beginning of another. She'd come to Harlan Ranch expecting only survival. She'd found a family instead. When summer came, Margaret visited as promised. She was different, quieter, more careful, genuinely interested in Lily's life rather than trying to reshape it. She stayed for 3 days, helping in the garden, telling stories about Catherine's childhood, building a bridge back to a relationship that had nearly been destroyed. The night before she left, she found Clara alone in the kitchen. I owe you an apology, Margaret said. A real one, not the rushed one I gave at your wedding. You already apologized. Not adequately. I judged you without knowing you. I assumed the worst because I was drowning in my own grief and couldn't see past it. You were never trying to replace Catherine. You were just trying to love a child who desperately needed love. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. Clara studied Margaret's face, seeing genuine remorse there. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because holding grudges only hurts everyone. And Lily needs as much family as she can get. She's lucky to have you. They both are. Margaret paused. Catherine would have liked you, you know. She always said she could judge a person's character by how they treated children and animals. You're kind to both. That would have mattered to her. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for giving me a second chance, for letting me be part of their lives, even after everything. After Margaret left, life settled back into its rhythms. The ranch prospered under Ethan's careful management. Clara's garden produced abundantly, providing food for winter and extra to trade in town. Lily grew taller and more confident, her reading improving to the point where she could work through books on her own. And the three of them continued to build their family, day by ordinary day. 2 years later, on a warm September evening, Clara stood in the yard watching Lily play with a new litter of barn kittens. The girl was 8 now, gangly and growing, her laugh ringing out clear and joyful as a kitten climbed up her dress. Ethan came to stand beside Clara, wrapping his arm around her waist. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their daughter play. Do you ever think about that first day? Ethan asked. When you arrived here and everything was so broken? Sometimes, Clara admitted. It seems like a lifetime ago. In a way it was. We were different people then. We were. But I'm glad we found our way to being these people. Lily caught them watching and waved enthusiastically. Papa, Clara, come see. This one has 6 toes. They laughed and walked over together, bending down to examine the polydactyl kitten with appropriate seriousness. Lily chattered about names and personalities and which one she thought they should keep, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. And as the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Clara felt a peace so profound it took her breath away. This was what happiness looked like. Not some grand adventure or dramatic transformation, but this. Simple moments with the people you love, building a life together one day at a time. She'd been a desperate woman answering a job that didn't exist, brought to this ranch by a child's courage and determination. She'd been hired under false pretenses and stayed for love. She'd married for protection and found partnership. She'd expected nothing and received everything. Some families are found, some are born, and some, the very best ones, are built by the bravest hearts of all, by people willing to risk hope when everything feels hopeless, by people who refuse to give up on love even when love seems impossible, by people who choose each other again and again, in small ways and large, until choosing becomes as natural as breathing. Lily looked up at her, kitten cradled carefully in her arms, eyes shining with joy. "Are you happy, Clara?" Clara smiled, looking at this child who'd saved them all, at the man who'd learned to love again, at the life they'd created together out of broken pieces and desperate hope. "I'm happy, sweetness. I'm so very happy." And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky above Harlan Ranch, as the three of them walked back to the house together, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home.